The papyrus, putting on my table every month. I don't wanna be sad. Don't even try to hide it. No, I don't wanna lose it. And you say how it is, it's so inviting. The papyrus, we're all so alive. The papyrus.
This is the Papyrus TV news update. You're welcome. The headlines: House of Representatives warns Rivers State Sole Administrator, you cannot make laws. Serap urges Tinubu to reject $1.08 billion loan, recover missing 233 billion naira. Police arrest protesters nationwide amid crackdown on free speech. Patience Jonathan's ex-staff languish in jail as trial delays persist. Freed Rivers arson suspects alleged torture, pressure to implicate Ehie. Nigeria celebrates first National Police Day with parade and tributes in Abuja. The details. The House of Representatives has issued a stern reminder to the sole administrator of Rivers State, Vice Admiral Ibokete Ibas, retired, declaring that he lacks the constitutional authority to formulate or enact laws for the oil-rich state, even amid the ongoing state of emergency. This statement comes in response to Admiral Ibas's recent announcement that his administration is finalizing a new state budget aimed at reviving healthcare, education, social services, and infrastructure over the next 6 months. The move has triggered unease within the National Assembly, which views it as an overreach of the administrator's powers. Speaking Monday, Deputy House spokesman Philip Agbese stressed that lawmaking is a function solely reserved for the legislature, and the administrator's role, however temporary, does not include budget formulation or statutory governance. He added that Speaker Tajuddin Abbas is in active consultation with House leadership to create a special oversight committee that will monitor Admiral Ibas's conduct in office. Agbese said, the sole administrator does not have the authority to carry out the National Assembly's function of making laws under the current circumstances. The Speaker is consulting with leadership to establish a committee to oversee the administrator's activities and ensure that the interests of Rivers State are represented. He further stated that the House assumes President Bola Tinubu has been briefed on their resolution regarding the scope of Admiral Ibas's appointment. Should the administrator exceed his authority, the House will take necessary actions, including the possibility of a vote of no confidence, to ensure accountability and adherence to the rule of law, Agbese warned. The crisis in Rivers State stems from a fierce political standoff between Governor Siminalayi Fubara and the State House of Assembly. In March, President Tinubu declared a 6-month emergency rule, suspending both the governor and the Legislative Assembly. Admiral Ibas was appointed as sole administrator to steer the state during this interim period. While addressing a delegation of Rivers lawmakers last week, Ibas defended his decision to prepare a new budget, citing the Supreme Court's verdict on the previous one. He said the new fiscal plan would prioritize job creation, agriculture, infrastructure, and technology, adding that the process was being handled transparently and with urgency. However, with tensions now rising between the executive and legislative arms of government over constitutional boundaries, the matter appears headed for a legal and political showdown if Admiral Ibas proceeds with the budget implementation without legislative backing. Meanwhile, as Nigeria stares down a deepening debt crisis, the Socio-Economic Rights and Accountability Project, SERAP, has issued a bold appeal to President Bola Tinubu, saying no to the recently approved $1.08 billion loan from the World Bank and instead recover 233 billion naira in unaccounted public funds allegedly mismanaged by federal agencies. In a strongly worded letter dated April 5, 2025 and signed by its Deputy Director, Kolawole Oluwadare, SERAP argued that the loan, while packaged by the World Bank as a tool to support education, nutrition, and community resilience, was both unnecessary and unjustified given Nigeria's current fiscal realities. The rights group urged Tinubu to direct the Attorney General and relevant anti-corruption agencies to immediately investigate ministries, departments, and agencies, MDAs, cited in the 2021 Auditor General's report for mismanagement and diversion of funds. Among the most egregious cases cited, the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC, NBET, Abuja, allegedly paid out over 96 billion naira for goods and services never delivered, failed to account for another 111 billion naira spent in 2021, and didn't recover nearly 3 billion naira in debts owed. Additional allegations pointed to the Nigerian Security Printing and Minting Company, NSPM, which reportedly failed to remit 10.4 billion naira in collected taxes and awarded 14 billion naira worth of contracts in violation of due process. Even government institutions meant to uphold the law, like the Federal Road Safety Corps FRSC, were named. According to the Auditor General, the FRSC diverted over 3.5 billion naira from driver's license revenues into private commercial banks and failed to remit another 465 billion naira in taxes. In total, SERAP documented alleged financial misdeeds totaling over 233 billion naira across multiple federal agencies. Calling the debt burden crippling and unsustainable, SERAP stated the missing funds should be recovered and funneled into addressing Nigeria's budget deficit. It gave the Tinubu administration a 7-day ultimatum to act or face potential legal action to compel accountability. In another development, tension gripped several Nigerian cities on Monday as nationwide protests against poor governance and shrinking civil liberties were met with a heavy-handed police presence. Activists were arrested in Yobe and Abuja, while tear gas rained down on demonstrators in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Organized by the Take It Back movement and led by activist and former presidential candidate Omoyele Sowore, the protests erupted in Lagos, Abuja, Oyo, Rivers, and Yobe, demanding an end to bad governance and urging the federal government to repeal the controversial Cybercrime Act, which critics say is being used to suppress free speech online. Among those arrested were a male protester known as Flag Boy and a woman identified only as Bosse, who were picked up near Transcorp Hilton in Abuja. In Yobe, 4 other protesters were also reportedly detained. The movement's national coordinator, Juwon Sanyaolu, told reporters that protesters in Rivers were also met with force, with several dispersed by tear gas. The protest was intended as a peaceful demonstration calling for reforms, but participants say the reaction from security forces confirms their worst fears, that dissent in Nigeria is being criminalized and citizens silenced under the pretext of national security. Despite the crackdown, movement leaders vow to continue their campaign for accountability and freedom of expression. In other news, a disturbing story of justice delayed and possibly denied is unfolding in Bayelsa State, where 15 former domestic staff of Nigeria's former First Lady, Patience Jonathan, remain in prison nearly 6 years after being accused of stealing her jewelry. Since their arrest in 2019, the case has lingered in court with no conviction, no conclusive trial, and no bail granted, despite repeated attempts by the defense. Now, multiple sources close to the case allege that the prolonged delay is not by accident, but by design. 2 private lawyers representing Patience Jonathan, Ige Asemudara, and Samuel Chinedu Maduba, are accused of deliberately stalling court proceedings by dragging out witness testimonies sometimes for years and making frequent excuses to delay hearings. They take long adjournments and offer flimsy excuses like illness or unavailability of witnesses, a source close to the case revealed. Even the original bail applications filed by the defense were delayed at the judge's request, purportedly to allow prosecutors to present evidence. But when bail was finally considered, the judge shockingly denied it, citing capital offenses, charges the prosecution has struggled to substantiate in court. The workers, many of whom are still languishing in the Okaka Correctional Center in Yenagoa, have been identified as Williams Alami, Vincent Olabi, Ebuka Cosmos, and 12 others. Their story has sparked outrage among legal experts and human rights activists who now describe the case as an abuse of the judicial system and a gross miscarriage of justice. Furthermore, 4 men once accused of being behind the 2023 fire at the Rivers State House of Assembly have broken their silence after spending 6 months in prison. They now say they were pressured, tortured, and offered bribes to falsely implicate Edison Ehie, Chief of Staff to Governor Siminalayi Fubara, as the mastermind behind the arson attack. Chime Ezebalike, Kenneth Kwasa, Oladele Lukman, and Macpherson Olumini, who were freed in November 2024 after all charges were dropped, recounted their ordeal at the press briefing in Port Harcourt on Monday. Ezebalike said they were recently approached by a prominent PDP figure in Obiakpo local government area who asked them to rewrite their statements and name Ehie in connection to the fire. The men described the chilling experience of being blindfolded, detained incommunicado at the Federal Intelligence Response Team facility in Port Harcourt and tortured for weeks. They say they were offered money, up to 200 million naira, and the promise of overseas relocation in exchange for cooperating. One of the men revealed that a state assembly member personally visited them with a uniformed officer and pressured them to cooperate, warning them of consequences if they did not. Another detainee they claimed was offered his freedom if he identified Kwasa as an arsonist. Their release, after the case was transferred to the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt, marked the end of a traumatic chapter but opened a new one, speaking out in the face of alleged political manipulation of the judicial system. Now free, they have vowed to resist being used as pawns in a political power struggle. This country belongs to us all, they said. No one should be tortured or forced to lie for political convenience. We call on civil society, the media, and all justice-loving Nigerians to rise and resist the weaponization of state institutions against innocent citizens. Conclusively, Nigeria on Monday, April 7th, held its inaugural National Police Day at Eagle Square, Abuja, in a grand ceremony designed to honor the service, bravery, and sacrifice of officers of the Nigeria Police Force. The event, rich in symbolism and color, brought together top government officials, security chiefs, families of police personnel, and members of the public in what is now set to become an annual tradition. The celebration marked the official observance of April 7 as National Police Day, a day institutionalized by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to recognize and appreciate the critical role played by the police in maintaining internal security and upholding the rule of law across the country. At Eagle Square, the atmosphere was charged with pride and patriotism as uniformed officers marched in parade formations, showcasing discipline and coordination. The event featured various ceremonial displays, operational demonstrations, and award presentations to outstanding officers who had shown exemplary commitment to duty. Families of fallen heroes were also honored at the event, as tributes were paid to officers who lost their lives in the line of duty. Retired officers were recognized for their years of dedicated service, and current personnel were celebrated for their efforts in responding to national security challenges. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, praised the courage of Nigerian police officers and expressed gratitude to the federal government for the recognition. He called for greater support, training, and welfare for officers to enable them to continue carrying out their duties effectively and professionally. National Police Day, going forward, will serve as a platform not only for celebration, but also for reflection on the reforms needed to reposition the Nigeria Police Force as a more people-focused and accountable institution.
The papyrus, put it on my table every month. I don't wanna be sad. Don't even try to